This is the beef tallow hold method, and it's going to change backyard barbecue forever.
Big thanks to Napoleon Grills for sponsoring this episode.
I know it's a bold statement, but I really think that this is going to change we barbecue in our backyard. If you don't watch my YouTube videos on a regular basis, I'm going to bring you up to speed, because what we recently have been testing is smoking our barbecue foods and then holding them. Of course, the goal of holding the meat is to make it taste better, make it more juicy and more tender. And where did I get this technique from? Well, it comes from a Michelin star barbecue restaurant named Lewis and Leroy. It's their special method to cook beef cheeks all the way up to temperature when they're done, and then hold them in beef tallow so that they become extremely juicy and tender. Now, of course, I did the same test and I found that if I cut that beef cheek with a fork, it was just perfection. I'm talking tender, I'm talking juicy, I'm talking we don't ever need a knife ever again.
Okay, that's great.
And now the question is, does it only go for beef cheeks, or does it also work for other barbecue cuts, like these beef ribs? Just think about it. If this method works on these beef ribs, it might also work on brisket. And if we can produce perfect results every time using this method without fail, then that means this is going to be the perfect method to cook backyard barbecue from now on. Now, you know, there's a lot at stake here, so let's get started and fire up our Napoleon grill. First, I'm going to put in some briquettes to create an indirect and direct zone. Then I'm going to add some light charcoal and some heavy briquettes, using the light charcoal to start up the heavy briquettes that are going to burn down very slowly at a low temperature and for a long time. Of course, on top goes a chunk of smoke wood, and then the grill grates go on top. Closing the lid, setting the top vent all the way open and the bottom vent very slightly open. While the barbecue is coming up to temperature, we're going to prepare the beef ribs. Now, let's inspect the bottom first. We got a beautiful set of ribs. We got 4 rib bones, and as you can see, the meat is pronouncing a little bit over the bones, and that's fine because later on it will shrink and all come together. But if we take a look at the top, we see we got a little piece of fat cap right here that's not going into the meat, so we can actually take that off. And by taking it off, we're going to leave more space for the seasoning to season the meat. And that's what we want, because that is going to give us an amazing bark. Now, in general, I love fat on beef, but if it sits on top and it's getting in the way of flavor, it's got to go. There's a little bit of silver skin here, and that's got to go too. Now, the rest of the fat is running into the meat, so I'm going to leave that on. And now all I need to do is season it. I'll be using the PitmasterX Texas seasoning. This is a perfect Texas style seasoning for our experiment. Since it's very flavorful, it's going to boost the flavors, it's going to give us a beautiful bark, and it's going to give us a good reference point for flavor. Now, of course, I'm going to season all sides. That way we're going to have the good looks that these beef ribs deserve. Now, since it's a thick piece of meat, you can add a little bit more seasoning than with a thinner piece of meat, and that looks absolutely fantastic. These are now ready to go on the barbecue, but of course I'm going to add a thermometer in the thickest part of the beef so I can keep my eye on the temperature. There we go, on the barbecue over indirect heat. So we got our charcoal here, that's where the high temperature is. You can see it from the smoke coming up. Then we got our bricks to divide the heat, and now the smoke is just rolling over in the barbecue, creating basically what is a vortex of heat and smoke going over these ribs. So I'm estimating that we got probably another 20 minutes to go. We've been cooking for, let me check the 6 hours and 46 minutes. So almost 7 hours of cooking, and probably we're going to be in the 7 hours. And then it doesn't necessarily mean the beef ribs are done, because you got to do the poke test. You got to feel no resistance at all, and then you know the beef ribs are done, and not before that. But we got some prepping to do, because the next stage is the real magic part. This is the beef tallow hold, and that of course requires some beef tallow. So first we're gonna bring it up to temperature, and to do that I'm gonna use my Napoleon gas grill. Super easy, of course you can use your oven. Just gonna set this with 4 burners on to the lowest setting, and I'll let this slowly melt. The temperature of the beef fat should be around 65 degrees Celsius. It is the same temperature that you would like to have after resting the beef ribs. And my guess, it's going to take about 20 minutes to get up to that temperature. I'm going to get my thermometer and take a look at this. We got the most beautiful, insane bark. It is beyond belief how good it looks. Well, let's do the poke test. See where we're at. That is a bark. It's nice and soft. The bark's a little on the hard side, but this definitely done. These beef ribs look good to go. We can now take it off and put it in the beef tallow. Wow. I'm so happy with the end result. They got a beautiful shine to them. Look at that. That's absolutely gorgeous. And they got such a great crust. That is what you get if you leave the beef ribs on for the total cooking time without wrapping them. You're gonna get the best bark ever. Of course, you would normally wrap the beef ribs to retain as much moisture and as much of the fat that is not dripping down into the barbecue, so that you're going to get the most juicy beef ribs you can get. But now we don't have to. Even if we expelled all of the moisture from the beef ribs and they're now completely dry, and if this method works the way it needs to work, then the beef tallow that we just warmed up is going to fix all of that. So without further ado, let's get the thermometer out, get the beef tallow out. There we go. It's currently running at 65-ish, a little higher than that. And we're going to put it upside down with the meat side pointing towards and drop it in. Carefully, of course, like that. Fully submerged beef ribs resting. Holding at a temperature of 65 degrees Celsius. Put them in the barbecue. I've now turned down, so I'm going to make sure I plug a probe in. I'm just going to use the one from Napoleon. Plug it in, just lay it down in the bath, and then we just wait for 2 hours for the beef ribs to be done. Of course, if you can hold this overnight. This is a food safe temperature and you can go all the way until tomorrow, whenever you want to eat. But it also takes the stress away from the cook, because there's just one phase that you need to be smoking the beef ribs all the way up till they're done. And then in the second phase, you just put them in the bath that you keep them warm at. Now, if you want, you just stick it in the oven, set the oven to the temperature that you need, the 65 degrees Celsius. And then when the wife says you need to eat, then you just pull it out. I think that is one of the most genius parts of this method. But we still need to figure out if we can scale it to the point where we can put beef ribs in it or not. The moment of truth. Let's get the beef ribs. Nice. If this works properly every single time, this is literally going to change barbecue forever. I was even thinking of adding something to this technique that's probably going to make it even easier. Just let's say you have a deep fryer, which could be set at a low temperature, and you have it dedicated with some beef tallow set up, and you set it to the right temperature. You're always going to have a nice little warm bath to put your barbecue food in. It's just an idea. Look at this. That's insane. Look at how good this looks. All right, let's go. That is very promising. That looks very good. Wowzers. Let's see if it pulls away from the bone. See how easy that is. It just falls off the bone. Let's get the membrane off, and then we'll slice into this and then do a taste test, of course. See, the most important part is that the fat is rendered out. We got a beautiful smoke ring. We got a crust. It is juicy. It is tender. That is beautiful. Tears very easily. This is very, very good. Look, if you shred the beef, you find that there's fat in between each fiber. A little bit of fat, not like blobs of fat, but something that makes it juicy and tender. But with smoking for such a long time, building up the bark is insane. Of course, I need to know from you what you think of the beef tallow hold method. Is it something you would like to try? Do you think it's too complicated or complex? Or are we making things more easy by using this method instead of the 4-2-10 method? You have my personal opinion about it. And on that note, see you guys next time. Cheers.